Wow.
But we're very rarely all in here at the same time. Most people are up on the Hill or at the White House or off doing TV or something. So I don't. I think even at our weekly meeting, it's usually probably tops out about 30, but there are actually 40 of us here.
That's a lot to me.
Yeah.
How many people are in New York? It was like
Oh my.
250,
Oh,
I think.
it's enormous in New York. I've lost track of them. I mean,
My
I went
students
there to
visited a
visit.
couple of years ago. It was like 200 something.
It's at least that big now because we moved HuffPost Live out here to the East Coast. So now HuffPost Live
Ah,
has their own floor. So it's
wow.
huge. Yeah, it's huge.
So can you give a 1 minute sketch of just how you got to be where you are? I told them that you had been at Mother Jones, but could you just sort of remind me how you came? Did you get a journalism degree? What got you into this whole arena, that kind of thing?
Sure. So I have a degree in journalism and politics from Ithaca College. I graduated in 2006. And then I went from there and did an internship at Grist magazine out in Seattle, which is online only environmental magazine. I say magazine, but online only environmental platform.
They talked
Uh,
with Scott, not with Scott Rosenberg. Did you guys talk to Scott Rosenberg from Grist? Yeah, yeah, right. Yeah,
oh, great.
early on,
Okay.
early on.
Great. So yeah, so I went and was an intern at Grist for a year. And then I got offered a fellowship back here in DC at the American Prospect. So I came back to DC and did their writing fellowship. I did that for a little under a year, and then Grist decided to hire me back to be their DC correspondent on politics. So I went back to working for Grist, but working from Washington. And I was with them for a year and a half, and then I went to Mother Jones and was at Mother Jones for 4 years, covering environment and energy there. And I joined Huffington Post in August of this year.
So you have never reported for something that's printed?
No, that's not true. I worked at my local newspaper.
Oh, okay.
I started when I was 18, working at the local paper. I went to ask if I could help out and like get some sort of maybe they could let me have an internship, and they were like, "Well, somebody just quit, so you can have their job." So I started working at the local paper when I was 18 and worked there for summers and winters all through college. So
Yeah.
I did work. I did work on dead trees for a while, and then my Mother Jones is a bi-monthly magazine. So I still have a deep love of print, even though most of what I do is online.
So what's your take on Huffington? What brought you there? What made that desirable? I mean, I don't want to get into anything that's sensitive, but
No,
what made that a
uh,
desirable move?
it was really hard to leave Mother Jones. I'd been there for, like I said, 4 years. It was a great place. In my heart, still love magazines and long form writing. But yeah, Huffington had asked me a few times about coming over here, and they sort of made a great offer and sort of a
Yeah.
great, argument that it's really hard. I mean, it's hard to beat in terms of traffic and attention, and I think having influence on the conversation as well. And for me also, I've spent my most of my career had been in nonprofit news, and I really wanted to work at a for-profit place as well. I'm currently a graduate student at American University
Right.
in a program on media entrepreneurship. So I feel like I needed to try working at a place that was actually for-profit for a while and see what that's like, since all my
Sure.
experience had been nonprofit.
So how do you?
So
The
yeah.
the question came up. How do you possibly do all that? Because a lot of these students are juggling jobs and their degrees here and stuff too. So they were kind of, oh,
Uh,
she's in graduate school also.
Yeah, it's I just started the grad school program in August, so I started grad school the week after I changed over to start here. So I'm still trying to figure out how to make it work. My last final was on Monday this week, so I was very excited to be done and have a break and only have one job for the next month. But the nice thing about the program I'm in at AU is it's aimed at working professionals, so everybody in the program is working, and they try to make it, I think, manageable. And so I have classes on Saturdays and then one night a week, so it makes it a lot more doable.
So
Um,
in theory, anyway.
in theory,
I saw
right?
you bought a cheap bottle of wine the other night or something on Facebook.
Yes, I didn't even know Whole Foods had $4.99 bottle of wine, but it's gonna get me through grad school. But yeah, it's great. It's a 20-month program,
Yeah.
so it'll be done quickly.
So I think still there's this impression that Huffington is still largely unpaid content and sort of living off everybody else's stuff. And it's been pretty clear to me for a couple of years that that's not the case. They did a really great series on coastal overdevelopment
Hmm.
that I pegged after Sandy that I wrote about that. I thought was just superb. And so do you get the sense this is really becoming the norm? They're really bolstering that side of things?
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, I think they really do value reporters and are putting a high value on that, and hiring really like great people. I mean, the DC office is all reporters and editors, so I mean, everybody here does like amazing reporting. I think a lot of people do have that impression that it's oh well, it's mostly cat videos or something. But I mean, obviously we have that too, and I like to think that those cat videos help fund me doing important climate reporting and energy reporting. But that happens. Yeah, that's on there. But I do think we're doing a lot of great stuff here too. I mean, we won a Pulitzer a few years ago for David Wood's series on veterans. So I mean, it's a place where a lot of people are doing really serious journalism as well. And that's part of the reasons I want to come over here is because I mean I think that's sort of an interesting model. And I mean, entertainment things have always subsidized the news to some extent. So
Sure.
It's not really anything new. I think we just sort of do it at a grand scale.
And
But it's crazy how many people read stories when you write them over here. I mean, places I've worked before I thought had pretty good audiences, but just it's the places that our stories like pop up and the number of people who share them and read them and comment on them. It's really like if you're in journalism because you want to have an influence, I think this is a great place to be.
That's pretty wild. So then, this is a course in blogging. I mean, I don't really teach it as a course in blogging per se. It's a course in online, being effective online, whether it's Twitter or a blog or just reporting or whatever. But we do focus on the blog as a specific medium. The New York Times has pretty much folded up all of its blogs. There's a few left. They're just now part of the general content. Is there a delineation at Huffington Post between what's a quote unquote blog and what isn't?
There is a very minor delineation, but it's like so in the weeds in terms of like how you input it in the back of the site, but it doesn't really matter. Basically, any story where we're doing original reporting is a story, even if it's like a 300-word story. They look the same in practice on the website. The only difference is like if I filed something that I was going to call just a blog post, which would maybe just be like me referring to something that happened and somebody else reported on. It would look very, very slightly different. Like you probably wouldn't notice the difference from the outside as compared to what I would notice it because it's really slight. But I think the things that are 2,000-word pieces really are in the same format as our 300-word pieces.
And what's your take on Twitter? You're getting up there. You're like 50,000 followers.
Twitter's interesting. I like Twitter. The more I use it, I realize that it really is like a sort of an inside baseball kind of thing. I mean, it's important for getting what you write in front of the eyes of other people who are smart and covering these things and tuned in, but you're not really reaching a really broad audience on Twitter.
Right.
I mean, if you wanted to reach a broader audience, like getting it to do well on Facebook is really like probably a much better way of doing that. But it's something I hadn't really thought about it too much, but I think because I'm doing this grad program and part of my coursework is sort of thinking about what the difference is between how you use the different forms of social media. I'm thinking about it more, but I think Twitter is useful, but it's not nearly as much of a traffic driver as like a Facebook is.
Yeah, I kind of see it the same way. It's part of my neural network to people who are working on the same questions more than it is a mass audience. But it's still, for that reason, to me, it's very important.
No, it's great. I mean, if I want to get the story I've written in front of other people who are energy environment reporters, it's great for that. And also for just readers who are really tuned into those subjects, they're on there. Yeah. They follow people who cover that stuff. It's good to reach them, but it's not like it's not a really broad audience. It's also been good for me. I've used it in the past for reporting in some ways.
Yeah.
It's like sometimes when a lot of reporters are covering the same event, we'll sort of like be trading sort of like insights and tips on there, and it's useful for that reason. I'm recovering the climate bill debate in 2009. A lot of people were sort of using that to cover it in real time, and I thought it was really helpful for that. When I was covering the oil spill, the BP oil spill, I was getting like people were finding me on there and sending tips and ideas, and that was really useful too. So I think it can be useful for news gathering purposes as well, in terms of, and not just for promoting the story. But also, somebody who's like just sort of getting into blogging or tweeting or the online space, it's useful as a place that you can sort of demonstrate your interests and your voice. because if you don't have a sort of large footprint online, that's sort of a great starter footprint. So people see, oh, this person is like interested and they're smart and they're looking at these stories and this analysis and here's how they're thinking about things. Like it's good for that. And people who are young journalists, I tell them to sort of start building their online footprint through multiple mediums.
Young journalists, unlike you.
I'm still young.
Yeah, that's what I mean. No, were you delineating between you and people who are young?
Oh, I mean, like
the like an
19-years who are still in school.
Okay, that's I didn't mean it the other way. No. And does Huffington work hard to build your sort of footprint on Facebook, or do you have to do that yourself? Like, do you just post if you do a piece? Do you put it on your own Facebook page, or do you have a public figure page there now, or how does it get out there?
I'm funny. I still think of I feel like I'm maybe like sort of old school in my Facebook approach, and that I treat Facebook as just like a social, like purely social. Like I put pictures of my cat up there, and I like talk about. I post about like grad school. I don't really post my stories on there very often at all, unless it's something that I'm like, here's something that I'm really proud of, and I want my friends and family to see it. Right. I try to keep it separate, and whereas I use Twitter for my professional sort of social networking, but I do realize that it's probably to my benefit to try to get our stories out there on Facebook. But I think we do it through the various pages that we have for Huffington Post.
Right.
I still haven't quite figured out how to separate. Like, there's people who friend me on Facebook who just read my things, and I have to separate. I need to figure out how to separate them into a separate category than like people who I feel like should see pictures of my cat.
Yeah.
I haven't done that yet. It would be a project. Maybe I'll do that over my break.
I haven't had time to do that.
Yeah.
It's just one big flow. Does anyone have a question out there? Or anyone thinking about any? One thing because we haven't done a Huffington visit the last couple of years, I want to check back in. Several of these blogs, I think, have a lot of potential to find a space in Huffington sphere. I just don't know.
Oh, that'd be great.
I just haven't talked to. There's been some of the Times people I knew there are gone now, so I can't remember.
Yeah, because Tom's at night, right? So
yeah, right. And then Tim O'Brien, did he was there and left?
No, he's not there now. He went somewhere else. I don't remember where he went, but he's gone. Yeah.
Yeah. So is there a blog? Do you know who's the poobah of sort of finding bloggers who can fit into the Huffington mix?
So there is a community poobah, and then there would be like the person who runs the green page if people are doing environmental writing, and I would suggest reaching out to both of them because between them they could help figure out how to get somebody on there, and it's still pretty easy. Like if people are recommended as bloggers, I usually send it along to the blog editors, and it's not too hard to get it up there.
Yes.
But you should definitely connect with James. He's the green page editor. He's a good person to talk to. James,
Garrick.
Gherkin? Gherkin. Yeah, I've never actually pronounced his last name out loud. He's great. And he's in New York, so he could probably be, if you want to connect with people in New York, he'd be a good person to talk to.
Yeah, we'll try to do that. Yeah, the blogs range from one on sort of redefining feminism for the 21st century to blog on where movies connect with reality in terms of things like environmental issues.
Oh, that's cool.
One on adoption. A couple on fashion and new business, creating a new business that's a fashion business, and on and on. It's a really good, rich collection of one on stuff made locally, made in America. What that means, is that good? How does that work? So it's been an interesting semester. Next week's their last day too, but I think some of these are going to live on and on, which is really cool. It's been another good.
That's always my number one piece of advice for anybody who's trying to get into the space is start writing about something that you care about, and that's sort of how you sort of create your profile online and get people to start paying attention to it.
And that's how you sustain the energy to do it.
Right. Yeah, you have to pick something that you're not interested in it.
Right. It's not gonna thrive. Any questions? Otherwise, we can go back to our round of stuff. Anything come to mind? Joanne?
How much writing do you wind up doing in a day? Do you think of it in terms of pages or hours, or does it vary by the day?
How much writing typically? Any idea? How many?
I wonder if I've never tried to quantify in words. Some days I put out a lot. I'll put out 3 posts that have some reporting and are at least probably up to 400, 500 words. Some days I don't put out any posts. I mean, usually that means I'm working on something that's a little bit longer term or needs some more reporting. Yeah, I mean, I try to get at least a short story up every day, and then balance that with features. That's one of my biggest challenges right now is trying to balance it with trying to do longer stories. I have two longer features that I need to finish that I've just been, they kind of fall to the bottom of the queue because they're not breaking news. And so figuring out how to balance that is hard. But I would say like I try to do at least something, get something online every day because there's always something happening. So it's just I gotta pick what I can get and what I have to pass on.
It's true. Yeah, Jenny.
I'm always curious that if you're posting things 500 words a day, who's vetting that? I mean, who are you passing that by?
Do you have an editor?
Publish and post.
Yeah, so everything we write goes through our desk editors. So there's a team of people who are just do the editing. So they'll do make sure that I haven't done anything too crazy and make sure I've spelled people's names correctly. And if I miss something, they'll usually flag it for me. So they would edit my daily content. And then we have features editors for the longer stories as well, who would do a much more sort of detailed back and forth, like content and structure editing on that. And then I'm also an editor, so I edit some of the other writers and fellows and interns on environment stories as well. So yeah, everything is looked at by someone else before it goes online.
Are there a lot of interns?
In DC, I think we have 2 interns and a fellow right now. There's usually about 3. I mean, I think there's more in the summer, but there's usually about 3 here in DC.
Harrison, did you have a question?
Yeah. Have you ever written anything in the nonfiction sector, or I should say more fiction sector? Or is
No, I haven't. It's one of those things I'm like, oh, that sounds like it could be fun to do sometime. Because I like reading fiction a lot. But I don't know. Maybe I'm just not creative enough, or I think that reality is strange enough that it keeps me.
That's been my impression. That's my impression for sure. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it seems like something that would be sort of fun to do someday in the future.
All right. Any last questions?
One thing I say, I often tell people who want to be writers to read as much fiction as you can because I think it sort of makes you think more about storytelling and character development, and I think it's good because in fiction they're creating a world from nothing. You have to really walk through the process of explaining things to people, and I think that's really important when you're writing about subjects, especially like energy and environment, that are kind of complex, and you have to sort of develop a sort of world for people and a detailed explanation and the context and characters. I think it's good to get in that habit of reading it. It helps you be a better storyteller.
By the way, one last question. Do you ever shut down?
I'm trying to get better about it. I'm realizing being in grad school now that I used to not sleep at all in undergrad, but now I'm I actually need to sleep. Yeah. But it is hard to turn off. I mean, it is sort of hard to not be in the sort of constant flow online. I have 2 features I really need to finish before they're sort of totally outdated. But I sort of have to. It requires you to sort of ignore the churn for a little while.
Right, which can be hard. It's really hard to do. I find that hard to do too.
Yeah, totally.
Have you been in touch with David Roberts, the offline man?
He keeps popping up in my G chat, and every time he pops up, I yell at him because I told him.
Oh, that's interesting.
It's supposed to be off the internet. His defense is that he's allowed to do personal. He's allowed to do personal email.
Okay.
So I've only chatted with him quickly in passing.
A year off from being online. Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, every time he pops up, I criticize him for being in there. But I haven't gotten a sort of real update. But he's posting lots of pictures on Facebook of having a whole lot of fun. So I think he's enjoying himself. He's supposedly writing a fiction book while he's off for this year.
That's
so I'll wait and see how it goes for him, and then maybe I'll think about it.
All right. Well, hey, thanks a lot for your time, and have a great holiday season. And good luck with getting your degree.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Andy.
That's a tough go, and we'll be in touch, and hopefully some of these students will end up in Huffington land.
Oh, yeah, let me know. And you guys should go visit, for sure.
Great. Take care.
Thanks, Andy. Bye.
Bye.